Hello everyone. Welcome to the Philadelphia IGDA meeting for April 2021. Tonight is one of our favorite events, which has actually become an annual thing, our art portfolio panel and review. In a moment, I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves and say a few words, but first, introduction to myself and the IGDA. So my name is Adrian Sandoval, and I am the chair for the Philadelphia chapter of the International Game Developers Association. We are a global organization that is dedicated to the enrichment and advocacy of game developers. Here in Philadelphia, we are dedicated to supporting our fast-growing professional network, as well as our very vibrant indie and academic community as well. If you'd like to learn more information about the IGDA, as well as information and benefits surrounding the organization itself and becoming a member, please head over to igda.org and consider becoming a member. As for us here in Philadelphia, we hold monthly events such as this one on the second Tuesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. And so if you want to keep abreast of all of our events that we hold, sometimes we do a couple of other special things outside of the second Tuesday. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or check out our website at philly.igda.org so you can keep up to date with those events as they happen. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube channel to see recordings of previous meetings, including this one in the future, in the very near future. So please consider subscribing as well. Hit the bell, get those notifications. We also have a Discord channel, one that we will be inviting you to all to very shortly for the one-on-one portion of tonight's evening with portfolio reviews. But it is also an active server that we use all year round, so please consider sticking around. One last thing, we do have a code of conduct, which you can read in full at our website. But please keep in mind that all of our events and communities are safe, inclusive spaces, and please respect each other in your communication here and our other events and online community spaces, such as our Discord. All right, thank you all so much. We are going to get started, and I'm going to go in order of the panelists as they are listed on my Zoom, in which case we are starting with Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, that's me. Hi, for those of you who may not know me, I am Rob Lloyd. I'm the program director for Drexel's Game Design and Production program here in the lovely city of Philadelphia. And I have a lot of opinions on portfolios, from being a co-op employer at my previous company where I did motion simulation for almost 15 years or what have you, to the various people I've hired and fired over the years. As well as teaching a portfolio sequence of courses now at Drexel. I even had one earlier this afternoon. So I look forward to sort of hearing your questions and seeing where those conversations go. But a lot of what I end up talking about around portfolios focuses on just how diverse they can be within the broad spectrum of game development and digital content creation. So we have an animation program, and those animation students don't have it easy to make a quality demo reel, but everything they do theoretically moves, and therefore it's most appropriately done in a demo reel. But if you're an environmental artist or a narrative designer or a coder or an encounter designer or systems engineer or any number of different other roles that you might have within game development, those are all going to take different ways of showcasing and presenting your best work. And so that's a lot of what I end up dealing with my students, is finding the most appropriate framing and site, whether it's ArtStation or itch.io or GitHub or wherever it is, to tell their story best, to make the argument best, to win the job that they're looking for. And so it's that level of complexity that I think conversations like this are so important, because there's not one size fits all solution. It is a very role dependent and individual dependent exercise. So I applaud everyone who's here and is engaging this conversation. And I'm really thrilled that we have such a nice selection of people here on the panel tonight to have a diversity of opinions on this thing. So that's me, Rob Lloyd, Drexel.
Thank you so much, Rob. And next up, we have Brittany.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Gilbert. I am the Director of Experiential Strategy at Tipping Point Media over in Malvern. I've been with TPM for about 4 years, but before that, I've also had experience working in interactive video content as well as mobile game design. Even though my title is Director of Experiential Strategy, I have been a project manager the last seven years. So that's where my background is. I graduated from Drexel's Game Art and Production program. So I have a production background as well, and that really helps with the project management. At TPM, I handle a lot of the, as Rob said, the hiring and unfortunately the firing. So I see a lot of portfolios and resumes from artists, designers, coders, project managers, instructional designers, etc. A little bit about Tipping Point Media. We are a learning company, a learning development company, as well as doing marketing, mostly in the life sciences and pharmaceutical industries. We do everything from e-learning, digital courses, PDFs, to what my part of the company does, which is virtual reality, augmented reality, gamification, simulation, you name it. So more in the serious game side of training doctors, pharmaceutical sales reps. Even nowadays, we're starting to get into some government work as well. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And what you're seeing in my literal background is an example of some of the stuff that we work on. This is the colon, and you can see some bacteria flying around with some probiotics. So just a little example of some of the cool 3D work that we do over in Tipping Point.
Awesome, thank you. And next up, we have Jen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Cram. My pronouns are they, please. I am a freelance animator and illustrator. I have skills in both 2D and 3D animation. The character animation is my bread and butter. It's my jam. But I also have some experience in the stop motion animation, so I have a pretty wide variety of skill sets. I worked in TV animation between 2013 and 2018, at which point I moved back up here from Atlanta to be a little closer to family and started working in app development. We worked on creating an avatar creation app that included some animation elements. Our goal was to create as diverse a sample of assets to build your character as possible. I found that a lot of avatar creation only suits like a certain amount of the bell curve, and there's a good amount that get chopped off, unfortunately. So our goal was to make it as inclusive as possible. It was a really excellent project. The titles that you would probably know me for, the biggest one is Archer. The second, my favorite one to work on was actually The Get Down, which was a Baz Luhrmann jam on Netflix. So yeah, that was like a really fun project to work on. I'm currently an assistant professor of animation and game arts at Moore College of Art and Design, in addition to freelance animation and illustration, which I continue to do. I teach our professional development course and help students get ready for internships and developing their portfolios and making sure that they're suiting their work sample to what they want to do and helping them figure out what that is necessarily. I feel like in school, we get a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, and figuring out exactly what you want to necessarily do with quote unquote the rest of your life can feel very intimidating. So helping our students figure out not just what you want to do, but where do you want to live? What work is available there? What kind of life do you want to have? Do you want to be a smaller part of a huge company where you do the same thing every day? Or would you like to wear a bunch of different hats at maybe a smaller company? Are you prepared to work 60-hour weeks, or would you rather work at maybe a smaller pond that requires less intense hours? All of these are really valid questions to be asking yourselves. So it's very easy to get caught up in the I want to go for Disney or bust mentality, and that lifestyle doesn't necessarily suit everybody. So that's one of the things that I like to bring to people, in addition to helping their work get up to snuff. But like, where do you want to go? And then we build the portfolio from there. So that's sort of my hot take on portfolios.
Awesome, great. Next up is Nick.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Madonna. I'm the founder and studio manager at PHL Collective. We're a game development studio here in Philadelphia. We focus on console, mobile, VR. We're basically a kind of a hired gun, and we work with a lot of different partners in the industry. We've had a very long relationship with Cartoon Network. Most recently, we released an open world game based on the Ben 10 franchise. We also released a mobile game in October of last year called Goozy, which is a partnership with a very large YouTube influencer, which did quite well. And yeah, and we have a couple things that'll be announced very soon that'll be coming out later this year. But yeah, that's the short of it. Before I founded the company, I worked in AAA. I worked for Saber Interactive, Vivendi, and Square Enix.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Nick. And next up, we have Erik.
I'll put some student portfolio work behind me. I'm Erik Van Horn. I'm the program director at UArts for game art, the game art program. And I used to work all over the film and games industries, high and low. I did work on a Ben 10 franchise, Nick. So I did previs work for a really terrible live action Ben 10 thing that appeared on Nickelodeon a few years back. And I worked at Disney. I was a studio trainer there for mostly 3D productions like Chicken Little and Bolt and Tangled, but also Princess and the Frog. So got a lot of experience there. And I was the first ever digital program director for the Magic the Gathering properties at Wizards of the Coast. So I did a lot of not only work on video games based off of the digital card trading franchise, but also all of the marketing videos I directed. So diverse background, but I'm told we only have 5 minutes to introduce ourselves. So I'll get real straight to the point about my top 10 game art portfolio tips. Ready? Number 1, less is more, right? Recent replaces old. 15 items is the sweet spot. More than one image per project creates a better sense of the scope. That means 15 products on your main page, but if you click, you can hyperlink deep dives into your process, you know, with additional images of each project. Stills and turnarounds present in different media, you know, show on media appropriate platforms. So you can have a demo reel on YouTube and an ArtStation's page full of stills, and you get the best of both worlds because you never know where they're going to come looking for you. Process documentation. Number 2, that was all number 1, by the way. This is top 10. Number 2, you're judged by your weakest piece. Write that on your pillow and look at it every night before you go to sleep. Number 3, shoot for 1 level above your current skills, not 2 levels above your current skill level, 1 level above your current skill level. So shoot for jobs that you think are slightly beyond your scope, because if you're not challenging yourself, you're not growing as an artist. Admit your deficiencies when you write your cover letter, and stress your capacity and willingness and desire to learn so that they know that you're a lifelong learner. Number 4, cross-credit collaborators with their contact info. You have to make referrals. It's an industry of who knows who, and most jobs aren't even posted in the wand ads. You have to know somebody that works at the company. So if you have a lot of links on your demo reel to other artists that you collaborated with, guess what? You're telling them that you represent a community of other skilled artists that you know that you could bring on board in the future if they hire you. Number 5, concept is more important than craft unless it's a grunt level job. You probably don't want a grunt level job, so you want to show that you're thinking about your art and you're not just making it technically perfect, but you're creating something with thought behind it. So find the style in the subject. Number 6, presentation is everything. Fewer clicks at the top level, but a hyperlink deep dive into the process is okay. I think that was part of number 1 too. I cheated. Number 7, tailor to your career objectives because your work pigeonholes you. So if you don't want to work in anime, don't have a reel full of anime, and vice versa. If you only want to work in anime, make sure your reel is only anime. Number 8, be both a generalist and a specialist. and it is okay to have more than one portfolio. Because you should target your portfolio for the place you're applying for. And if they don't do dragons, don't show them a bunch of dragons. But if they do dragons, they probably want to just see dragons. So get a dragon portfolio with Wix.com. You can make a portfolio in like 10 minutes if you've already got the content to import. So make a dragon portfolio if they want dragons. Number 9, be yourself. Number 10, have fun.
Nice. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Erik. That was good. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have Bren.
I'll be taking over for Bren tonight because he can't speak right now. But Bren King is one of the co-founders of the company of PHL Collective, and he is the art director. Bren manages a large art team and coordinates with all different departments within the studio to make sure that art is one, not only looks good, but 2, works within the technical limitations of any platforms that we're building for or anything that the design team is coming up with. Brent, is there anything else you wanna say? Give me a thumbs up or down. Good. Okay. There it is. Brent King, everybody.
Very nice. Thank you all, and thank you all of you so much for being here and for being with us tonight and giving us your wonderful advice. So on that note, we are going to jump into the Q&A portion of the evening. So Rob has mentioned this in the chat, but just to let you all know, in Zoom, there is a Q&A function at the very bottom of the screen. So if you have a question for our panelists about your own portfolio, what people would like to see in their portfolio, please put it in the Q&A section. I will read off the question for our panelists, and yeah, and again, if you want to specify a question for a particular person, you can do that. But if you just want to ask a question for the panel, just ask the question, and I will throw it out there. While we are waiting for the Q&A, the first question that came in is for Rob from an anonymous attendee who just wants to know how Rob is doing. Hey Rob, how are you?
I'm okie dokie. I get my first shot tomorrow, so that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So
that's exciting.
I'll take that.
Congratulations.
I was actually beyond my general health. Thanks for inquiring. But Bren's the one who needs attention. Oh, we have our first question. This is awesome. So I don't have to pipe in with mine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the first question that comes from Floyd is what would a programmer's portfolio look like? And I believe a lot of us do have some experience with this, and Bren is already typing out an answer. So very shortly, but but it is a very good question. It's something that people think about a lot.
I can speak to this while we wait for Bren.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of what we look for. So we hire front-end programmers and Unity developers at TPM. And what I look for with a portfolio for programming, when deciding whether to move forward with a phone interview, would be one, the resume is super important, and what I would look for linked from the resume or from the application would be a portfolio website where I can see not only just like see some of the work like in a demo reel. That's not really necessary for me personally with the programmer's portfolio, but being able to either see examples of projects that you've done, or even like links to actual builds or prototypes, just to see like how things are function. A lot of programmers I also see like kind of break down the pieces that they've created in their portion in text, supplemented with screenshots of a project, just to give me a sense of like what you worked on and what the experience was that you worked on. We also look for something like either if you can send us, and this is more during the interview, samples of your code and walk us through like a project that you can talk to, and then talk to your part of it and talk us through some of the code that you wrote, or even a link to like a GitHub portfolio with some of those samples that our programmers can look through to get a sense of how you code and just examples of that. So that's what we look for at TPM.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bren's answering, but I can jump in for some specific things that we look for at PHL. Very similar to what Brittany said. Portfolio number one, which has games that you've made or are making, prototypes, anything that you've kind of done that shows us, where your current skill level is at. We are primarily a Unity house, so we're always looking for Unity programmers, and we want to make sure that you do have a significant amount of knowledge within Unity. It's great if you're an Unreal programmer, but just like kind of Erik said in his description of, or his list of do's and don'ts, make sure you know who you're applying to. So if you're applying to Unity Studio, don't send an Unreal portfolio. For us, we like to look at code samples up front. That's probably the first thing we look at. That's almost the gate. We want to see kind of syntax and kind of how you structure projects. And then from there, based on what we see, we'll go and then look at other projects that you've done and then have conversations, together with the programming team, just to kind of get an idea of who you are as a programmer, where, kind of how you would approach different problems, and also basically, almost as a side question, what's your design sense? We'll give you kind of a design problem, want to hear kind of what you think about that problem and how you would go about solving it.
And I'm going to read Bren's answer as well for those in the chat who can't see the Q&A part, and also for the recording. Typically, the best way to approach this type of portfolio is to provide your most recent code samples. Like Erik said, less is more. Links to GitHub are great. Companies want to see the way you think as well as your knowledge of the language. Very cool. Awesome. And we have some more questions in here. I'm just going to go in the order that I see them. Is it better to have a custom-made website such as a Wix page, or is an ArtStation just as good?
Well, it's unfair. This is one of my students asking this question, so they've already heard my answer. But for posterity, I got rid of a make your own website class within the Drexel's curriculum because when I was hiring out of Drexel, I think, well, let's go the other way. 1% of the time that website helped that student get the job with me. Every other time the website got in the way. And if you're not a web designer and you make a bad website, I'm now mad at you and disappointed with your skills, where, and also primarily the other thing, to go to a portfolio aggregator, whether it's ArtStation or Behance, or you're putting your stuff on GitHub or an itch.io page. If they're mad at the site, they're mad at the site, not you. It's also, no one's going to discover your personal website randomly. You have to send them there. Whereas on ArtStation or some other aggregator, hiring managers might accidentally discover you by chance. It's a slim chance, but it's better than zero.
I could build off of what Rob just said. So ArtStation is a community, so you can get discovered by accident, but everyone looking at your portfolio is also going to look at a million other portfolios, both before and after you. And you might have the bad luck of being looked at right after an awesome, much more senior artist, which would cast you in a bad light. So there is the time and the place for a Wix portfolio. Make one because they're free and easy and cheap, and they're template based. So you don't necessarily have to be a web designer. If you pick an artist's portfolio, it's already thought out by a good presentation artist to be optimized. And then if you send employers directly there in your cover letter, they're not going to be tempted by all the other people they see on ArtStation. They're going to only look at you.
You took the words out of my mouth, Erik. That was exactly what I was going to say. There's definitely a pro to both, and having both is a great idea. And Erik, I think you mentioned that make a dragon portfolio if you're applying for a dragon making position. Absolutely, it's very easy to do that on Wix, and there are so many low cost or free options for making websites at this point that you don't even have to worry. Like, you don't have to learn how to make a website. It's not your job. You're not a website maker, you're an animator. So just use Wix or Squarespace or whatever you've got. But yeah, if you can find a way not to pay for it, don't pay for it, because people will probably find you on ArtStation anyway.
I'd say to just add on to that, as long as you, even if things are in like a couple of different spaces, if you're using ArtStation and then like Vimeo for your reel, and then you have your resume, just make sure that everything can be found. So it's really frustrating when, you know, I get sent a portfolio site or a resume and I can't find the portfolio site or the reel in there. Just maybe even like have you know, someone else go through it to do some user testing to make sure everything can be found.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm jumping back in here, but as few clicks as possible. Recruiters look at hundreds, if not thousands of applications, and they're going to throw it out the window if they can't find the work that is relevant to them. If you are applying for a 3D modeling position and your landing page does not have your 3D modeling portfolio, you have made a mistake. Link them directly to whatever portfolio page is most relevant to the position that you're applying for.
Yeah, and I'll say, to add to that, remember that every recruiter is looking for the best perfect person for the position. And so your challenge is to be that best ideal person for the position. And if that means making yourself that person in terms of building a whole portfolio around that concept, then be that person. They're not going to hire you unless you are that person that is the best. And it's not going to work if you're second best. If it's only one position, you have to be the best person for that position. And they're not just looking for art skills. Remember, they're looking for interpersonal skills. They're looking at your cover letter to see if you did spell check. So dot your I's.
I would say just one more. I know a lot of people have commented here. Erik brought up a good point, because we have seen portfolios in the past which have been riddled with spelling errors, which haven't made any sense, that have been clearly copy and pasted messages, and they just changed the company name. We can tell, everyone can tell. It's very easy to spot those things. And that just shows us that you're doing a mass kind of application. It doesn't show that you've done any research into the company ahead of time to tailor your submission where it's going to get our attention and make it seem like you're a great fit for our studio and what we do. So, you know, take a little bit of extra time to make sure that everything is good, and that attention, you know, will be grabbed by the person on the other end of that application. The one thing I would say, maybe this is more of a personal thing. Rob mentioned that everyone should have a personal brand or a personal brand site. One thing I'd say there is that might be a slippery slope, where if you apply with this grand website with your personal brand and like you put yourself ahead of the work, it seems a little bit like you're, I don't know, a lot of studios there might be like a culture clash there, because it's a team atmosphere and it's less about the star person than it is, you know, about the work that the team is doing together. So being like really brand forward or personal brand forward can in some ways might, you know, not work for you. So that's it.
Cool. And
If I can circle back to number 9 of my art portfolio tips, I said be yourself. And that is because you will be pigeonholed, and you better make sure that the self you present is the self you're willing to live with for the next 10 years. Because once you get pigeonholed as a dragon artist, I keep going back to dragons because it's either dragons or Star Wars. In every concept meeting, it's either Star Wars or dragons is referenced at least once. But if you want Star Wars, do a Star Wars portfolio, but you're going to be there for the next 20 years. So make sure you like droids if you go that direction. Otherwise, you go to dragons.
That's a good point. I like that. The next question, which Bren is typing an answer to now too. What sort of prop should a 3D prop artist aim to create for their portfolio, and how many? What would catch a recruiter's eye the most? I think this is interesting too, because it kind of ties into the next two questions.
Kind of waiting for Nick to answer this one because he.
Yeah, I was gonna wait for Bren. Bren is the person to answer this question because
Okay.
he's the one who builds portfolios all the time. You know, a lot of times I see things that come in and say they look good or they look bad, but either way, I'll send it to Bren for him to do the deep dive and really kind of get in there. And I think he posted
He did.
his answer.
Yep.
Okay.
So Bren says create something that you will be passionate about. This will come across in your artwork, something that is personal to you. Most all prop portfolios contain a WoW-like axe or a Call of Duty style gun. Have something with flair to show personal style and technical chops. I agree with the point previously said. Make sure to tailor your portfolio to who you are applying to. Don't send a bunch of cute 2D animal creators to the fear team.
I have this general sense that if you're going for an entry-level prop artist role, that the predominance of that is going to be hard-edged stuff and less likely to be organic or character-based. But I don't know how true that answer remains. It's based on older information and context. So I'm curious from the rest of you whether that does that still feel true, that that's an entry level role, that you would be given hard edge props rather than either organics or character or anything like that?
I could say from us, yeah, there wouldn't be any character work, but I think if you're applying for an entry level prop artist position, be good at making crates, trees, all the boring stuff essentially, because as an entry level position, you would probably be tasked with making those things, and more senior artists will be taking on more of the hero props.
I want to build on that just a little bit, because we talked a little bit, and Erik, man, I'm making a video clip of your top 10 list there. That's pretty awesome.
Are you going to put it on TikTok?
Ooh, yes, I'll set it to some catchy little groove from the 60s, because that's all I know. Process, showing your thought process and showing things for prop models. Should people be calling out, hey, not only here's the final beauty shot, but here's the wireframe, here's the texture breakdown, here's the poly count. Do you want to see reference material? Like, how much of a story? I don't think you do that for every piece in the portfolio. It would seem redundant, but for a couple of key pieces telling that process story, are there other things that should be sort of framing that larger beauty shot of the prop?
Yeah, absolutely. Bren actually just posted that answer in the chat. But yeah, tech knowledge is also good to show off. So polyflow, tri-count, oval maps, any other kind of maps, metallic smoothness, roughness, whatever it is. Those are things that we want to see, because, yes, you can create a really great prop and render it really great and it looks nice, but if the technical knowledge isn't there, and that's a downside.
And also from Bren, make sure to include what platform you are making the asset for. Hiring individuals don't want to see console level prop for a mobile game, which absolutely makes sense. All right, cool. Another question. As someone with an art background who also wears many hats in the game design realm, how would I best incorporate all of my strengths into a portfolio? And based on that question, I'm going to say that is like not just like different art styles, but also like, I do a little bit of production work. I do a little bit of narrative design. How could I incorporate some of those into a art portfolio?
And I'm gonna jump in because I was I was typing for a while and then it was just getting too long. I'm like, all right, let's just do it live. So I think this depends on the type of position that you're applying for. I wasn't really sure if you meant an art background applying to something like an animation position, but you also have those game design, or a game designer with art skills like that. That depends on the type of position. Really, you want your portfolio to show that you are, you want that position and are capable of doing that position. And wearing multiple hats can be good, especially with a smaller or medium-sized company where they might need members on their team to jump into a whole bunch of different areas. But at the end of the day, game designer and artists are pretty different. And if I'm hiring for an animator, I want to know that they animate. I've definitely been in the position where people have said like, oh, I'm, an instructional designer, which is very similar to a game designer, only more of instructional designing for experience. And I'm also an artist and I'm also a programmer. But when I look at their portfolio, I can't really pin down what they are or even what they want to be. Like, are you a UX designer or are you a programmer? I know that you can do both, but this position that I have out there is for a programmer, and I need to know that you are an experienced programmer. So just really making sure that you build a portfolio that is for the position that you're applying to, and finding ways to work in your other skill sets as more of like nice touches and reminders to that you can do more without overtaking it. So just making sure that you're not confusing the person looking at it of like, what is this person?
Yeah, there's a way that you can create a demo reel that shows off different skills. I'm sorry, Jen. I'll let you speak. But if your demo reel has your contributions constantly running in the corner of the screen, then there's no question about what you contributed to what we're seeing on the screen. So you could be both game designer and animator or whatever, and just make sure that you mention it in the corner. And that's also a good spot to sneak in like who your collaborators were and maybe put their contact info in the captions so that they understand that you can collaborate. I think that people want to know that you can work on a team too. So it's important to credit collaborators and point out that you can work collaboratively.
I think that's a really good point, Eric, absolutely. And I just wanted to second Brittany's suggestion of, even if you are applying for a smaller studio that you know will be attracted to your generalist abilities, make sure that you have a hierarchy of what is your main goal. Know what your goal is, know what 1 or 2 things is going to make you happiest, and put your effort into those things. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to build on that a little bit, because I think, the higher I think it's a lot of it is really scale oriented. The larger the studio, the more likely they are to need you to be a hyper specialist in one area, and that's all they really want to know about. They may see in your resume or in some other hinting in a deeper dive that you're capable of other things, but if you're not a clear solution to the problem they need to solve, they'll move to the next easier candidate who will help be a more clear solution. It seems to me that is less philosophically based, and it's more scale based. But that's more of a feel on my part. But not all small studios want that diversity either. If they really have a specific problem they need you to solve, then they want to see a pretty fair amount of focus. So yeah, I mean, you came back and we're talking about should you have multiple portfolios, and yeah, I think, and you've heard that from a couple of different people tonight, is that whether you're on ArtStation, Behance, or personal website, you should have a direct link to send to somebody that takes them to exactly the argument you're making to solve their problem. Let them discover that you have other portfolios, but you respect them and send them directly to the question or the answer you're providing.
And I think,
Sorry.
Oh, so go ahead. So I think I've run into this the most with UX. People who want to do UX or game design and also programming, when I put out programming or even UX positions, because those kind of tend to cross sometimes, and it's been really hard to tell like what the person wants to do, if they want to be a programmer, if they've also got a really strong UX portfolio, because at least from the smaller studio, we invest in the people that we hire. We don't take that lightly. And part of the conversation has always been like, yes, they can do it, but do they want to be doing that? Are they going to be happy if we make them program? If they're applying to a programming position, they can do all this great art stuff, and they're going to be programming all day, every day, and that's what we're looking. So yeah, just making sure that your portfolio really reflects what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Rob, I think you did nail it. It's all about scale and, you know, how big or how small the studio is. A lot of times it's dependent on how much you do or what the things within the studio that you do. One thing I will say is that just from firsthand knowledge, if you are applying somewhere and you're able to get in the door, right? Let's say you love being a prop designer, but also you love narrative or you love special effects. If your number one goal is to become a prop designer, get in the door as a prop designer and then work some of those other skills into your kind of, you know, your switchblade of skills or your Swiss Army knife of skills when you're in the studio. We found this out personally with a couple of people who work for PHL where they came in for a certain role, but also had desires to do other things within the studio. Like they're really great 2D artists and they wanted a storyboard, but they're VFX artists. So there's a lot of different things that you can kind of, you know, spread your wings, you know, for lack of a better word or term, spread your wings within the studio once you're already in there. So having all of those skills is great, but make sure that you're focusing in on one and then kind of expand when you're inside.
Cool. We have one last question in the Q&A right now. Is it better to be good at multiple art skills or great in just one skill or a few? So now we're like looking more closely at the art at art specifically and all the different art roles that are out there, which in modern games there are a lot. And I believe we have an answer from Bren, so I'll start with that. Having fundamental art chops is key. Illustration, color theory, design, all of these are building blocks to a successful career in game art. Whether you become a 3D modeler, texture artist, or concept artist, having these skills are paramount. The technical knowledge can typically be taught or adapted. Like I previously mentioned, showing off tech knowledge is good too, but it's always constantly evolving, whereas fundamentals are forever.
That is very true of every company I've ever worked for. We've always said, you know, we'll take a good artist and teach him the software, because you can teach software in a day or a month, but you can't teach art in a day or a month. It's a lifetime of practice. So you come to them with the strong fundamentals and you can get in the door without knowing anything about the technical processes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's a great point. I work with a very unique breed of artists at my position. Those are certified medical illustrators. They're very few, but they are medically trained and also are fantastic artists. And a lot of them that I've worked with in the industry are older in their when they were learning their craft. It was before 3D programs and 3D art was a thing. So they've actually, and they create some of the most beautiful art that I've ever seen. And I've talked to them, they've said, yeah, I'm self-taught. But you know, what was really key was that they have those artistic fundamentals and they're able to create incredibly high quality work. So just want to echo that, yeah, learning the technical skills, it can be taught, you can self-teach yourself, but the fundamentals are very important.
I'd like to jump in from I've meant to mention this a couple of times. It's good to have a big Swiss Army knife of skills for your own career longevity as well. In the studios that I worked on in Atlanta, if you were on the retakes animation team and they ran out of retakes, but they needed compositing help and you knew how to composite, that's excellent for you. So don't be afraid to showcase and talk widely about all of the things that you can do, even though you do have a very tailored portfolio and you know how to do this one thing really dang well. Don't be afraid to invest in other skills as well, because that you never know. Like, all of your 2D animation skills could go out the window one day when Disney lays off its entire 2D animation department, you know, but you've still got excellent animation skills. And maybe you got into this as a hobby in your side time, or you were a sculptor already. So it translates really nicely into 3D modeling or something like that. All of those skills, all of those hobbies really contribute to your overall versatility and adaptability. Something that I've learned is mandatory in this field.
Yeah, I definitely, that's such a strong point, Jen. It's for career longevity, for your own sanity, for your own protection, having things that you can pivot to if necessary. You know, some things, you know, fundamentals are forever, but a lot of things are will either get outsourced, or they'll be automated, or they'll be solved in some way that suddenly can, for a million different reasons, good or bad, suddenly make your position redundant. And so having something that you can then turn to may not keep you afloat in the current company, but it'll allow you to pivot. Or, you know, I think Jen, you might have been you were making this point earlier, which is really good. It's one I make with my students as well, of life may throw at you a million different factors, and you need to be in a certain city at a certain time in your life, and you've got to get work there. And so that's when your flexibility can really help you a great deal. So I think that's an important point. It's not something you necessarily plan for, but you should be prepared for.
Yeah, that's what I meant by be a generalist and a specialist. Is you want to be a generalist because you want to be ready to be flexible, but you want to, and certainly if you work at smaller companies, they expect you to be a generalist, wear many hats. But if you're also a specialist, like you do one thing better than everyone else on the team, then they know they can rely on you for that one thing. And I think everybody's looking for both a generalist and a specialist to be on their team. It's okay to be a multi-specialist. You know, if you have a primary and a secondary skill, that's the thing that's going to save you during dry spells. And every area has its dry spells. My primary specialization when I first started in the industry was 3D animation. And thank God I learned some rigging, because while I was a freelance artist and the 3D animation jobs dried up, everyone was always looking for riggers. So I had something to do to keep busy. So,
Riggers can always get a job.
Riggers can always get a job. But if you get a job as a 3D animator and you can rig, be quiet about it, because if you tell anyone in the studio you can rig, guess what you're doing from now on? You're not animating, you're rigging.
Oh man. Oh, all right. No, really, I lost it twice. I had the idea, it was in my head, and I lost it twice. Let's move on to the next question.
All right,
I'll
so the
think
next
of it
question
later.
is style looked at heavily with smaller companies and indies? For example, I have realistic assets as well as stylized in my portfolio. Jen, did you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can hop in there. First, I need to say puppy. Thank you, Eric. That was delightful. So who's this new guest panelist?
She's actually not supposed to be in here. She's being bad.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I will say that style is a word that I quickly came to hate in terms of hearing students explain things to me. Oh, that's my style. Okay, great. Can you do others? Because you are not going to be hired to do your style, are you? Especially not first, like as you're first getting into the industry. So instead of emphasizing style, I would encourage you to explore versatility. I would not have gotten hired to Archer if I could not draw the way that they draw on Archer. So having a really good foundation of realism is awesome. And then showing different ways of your ability to stylize in different directions. Or alternately, if you know that you want to work in a specific medium, like if you want to do League of Legends style, like exaggerated proportions for like a top down, do that, and then look for companies that are hiring for that. So I would emphasize versatility unless you are specializing and looking for a very specific position.
To add on that, we've actually not hired people for that exact reason of them having the same style and just not showing any flexibility. So especially with smaller companies, you want to show that you can adapt and branch out beside one specific thing. Because those smaller companies are going to have multiple different clients and multiple different with different needs, and they're going to look for someone who can just slot in with any project or any client.
Yes, we had specifically to that point. I think Jen mentioned like League of Legends or RPG characters, but our lead character artist actually applied to us with a portfolio full of RPG style characters and some things that were maybe a little bit more high poly or denser than we normally do for some of our games, but also showed that he was capable of doing cartoon style characters. So while we saw a portfolio full of things that Blizzard would have created or could have been in a Diablo game, he was actually able to excel because of his foundational skills, because of his modeling skills, and create We Bear Bears and Ben 10 and all of these other things which are very different in terms of silhouette, poly count, flow, texture quality, all of that good stuff. So yeah, having the ability to do both or show both is always a good thing.
I love the way you described what you do as being a hired gun. It's like perfect, and I could see how that would be really important.
You say work for hire, and everyone kind of knows what that means, but yeah, I always like using that term better because
like a tumbleweed just rolled across your screen. I don't know.
Who needs something built? Because we're gonna build it, right? It's like, yeah, what are we doing?
I think that goes back to the point a couple of us have made of doing your homework for who you're going for, right? And so if it's a group that is hired guns and are solving different problems on different projects for different clients and different looks, then flexibility is mandated. But if you are hyper targeted, like Jen was saying, at a specific style there's a company that you want to go work for, and they only speak one stylistic language. If you don't speak their style, I doubt they're going to look beyond, they're going to move on to the next person who does speak their style. So it really does come down to doing your homework and knowing what it is, what really is the problem that employer needs you to solve for them. And you're either a solution or a distraction.
That was the last question on the Q&A. Rob, I know you had like one that you wanted to throw to the panel. I didn't know if we had time for that or if we're ready to move to the next portion of the night.
I've forgotten my last point that I wanted to make, and I've forgotten if I had any question. But I think what I'd like to do before we have a number of attendees in the house, but I don't know how many are interested in doing the one-to-one portfolio reviews with our panelists over on the Discord. That's the next phase of our evening here, is to do that. So I'd be curious to have sort of a show of hands and whatnot from the attendees to confirm that we have a critical mass of people who want to do the one-to-ones, and so we want to move to that. But before we do that, I want to make sure that if they're, like, Erik, you did an incredible top 10, right? And we've heard some really strong points from everybody on the panel. I want to give one last opportunity before we move to the next phase. Is there something important that has either come to your mind in the conversation or something critical that hasn't come up in a question that any of the panelists want to get across before we do move on to the one-to-ones? Because this is an incredible mix of experiences and perspectives, and I really want to give one last chance to capture something that we may not have caught already.
I want to just hammer home one thing that I kind of touched on earlier, but it's really important, is please do research on who you're applying to. Please understand the studio you're applying to. Don't send those mass emails. Use spell check. Make it look like you put some effort into putting this application out, because that shows that you actually want to work for us, all right? And you potentially want to work for us. Don't get lazy. If you have 30 companies you want to apply to, that's fine. Take your time, apply to those companies. Don't get lazy and blast out an email or blast out multiple emails, because we can tell. And it doesn't work in your favor. So really do the research, take the time, and make the effort to put that application in and make it stand out and make it look good, because we can tell.
Kind of piggybacking off of Nick's point, every single studio you can do research on and find the words that they use to describe themselves. Don't just say, I want a job. Say, I want a job here because of this. And here's how I reflect it in my living life, I guess is the word, in my life and in my work. In my life and livelihood, maybe was the little, whatever. Make a match. Find what they say about themselves. Say the same thing about yourself. That's what the cover letter's for. And point to specific like evidence on your resume and in your portfolio that shows those things about yourself. Absolutely. Nobody wants a robot to work for them. Like, it's not like the cover letter and interview are to show your personality and to show that you are a good fit for their culture. I think Brittany mentioned that it's an investment. Like, we are investing in bringing you into our culture. So we want to make sure that you're a good fit.
One thing that's really great about culture, and this is a question we always ask in our interview, is, outside of technical skills and looking at who you are as a programmer or an artist, whatever it happens to be, we want to know what you're playing game-wise, or what you're watching, what you're reading. We want to know where your inspiration and your reference, your frame of reference comes from. It could be something that I watched a really great comedy special that is really kind of influencing me lately. It doesn't have to be necessarily game related. We just want to know, who you are as a person, what you're taking in, and what are the things that kind of influence you. And if there's any kind of shared likes in between you, the applicant, and people in the company. So that goes a long way to kind of having sometimes the same frame of reference, or even a shared vision. If someone references or talks about something, or a great concept in a game, or a great level in a game, that you immediately can say, yes, I know that, I've played that, or I've seen that movie, that the script or the monologue was great. Like, those are things that we always look for too, in addition to those base skills, and either in the art or programming. We want to know kind of where you are in terms of references.
I have one additional piece of advice that I give. I'm sure I have many more. This is just one that's coming to mind. Use the language of your industry. Every industry has vocabulary that are specific to what they do. Use those words. Don't just say, I like the colors. Like, use the words you have learned in school to show that you are able to do this on a professional level. So whatever you are doing, make sure that you are like communicating, because a huge part of your job is not just making the artwork, but communicating what needs to be done and communicating that you're able to do that. So work on your portfolio, work on your vocabulary.
And you mentioned interview, Jen, and you mentioned that the interview is really to determine if they're part of your company culture. Like, to the interviewer, that's what they're trying to figure out at that point. That means that you can only fail an interview. You can't pass it because you're already hired if you fit. They wouldn't have invited you to the interview if they didn't want to hire you. You can only blow it. So make sure that you come across as somebody that be empathetic, understand their point of view of you, and understand that they're going to have to look at you every day, 9, 12 hours a day during crunch time for the rest of their lives. Can you be that person that they don't mind staring at 9 to 12 hours a day, or are you going to be an annoying nuisance in the office? So the purpose of the cover letter is to get them to look at your portfolio. The purpose of the portfolio is to get the interview. The purpose of the interview is to tell them that you're a nice person.
So me being the project manager I always take a very, very good look at the resume as well. I'd say also make sure that your resume, just because you might be an artist and it is, yes, the portfolio is very, very important, but don't put off the resume either. Please spell check it. Please put some thought behind it. Please make sure that it looks clean. The resume is also very important because most likely someone who's going to be the first line of seeing your portfolio will be maybe an HR person, a hiring manager, a project manager, before it then gets to their very busy art team who's working on art things then and deadlines and projects. There's probably going to be some sort of first line that looks at your stuff before it gets to the team to evaluate. So please also make sure that the resume is in a good spot as well.
Some students.
Yeah, I want to.
Oh, go ahead. I've been talking so much. Go on.
No. We both probably have 40 million points we want to check off the list here, but go ahead, Jen, please.
Really, just to follow up on Brittany's point about resumes, I know that a lot of students who haven't worked in the industry yet, or maybe have only had like one internship, are worried about not being able to fill up a resume properly. I want to encourage and like just tell you guys about transferable skills. So maybe you've worked as like a line chef or something like that. What does that tell me? You're great at handling high pressure, fast paced situations. Make sure don't not include your history. Find a way to put bullet points under each thing that tells me what you took away from it. So find the most relevant things, absolutely. But if you are looking at a blank page and you're like, crap, I have nothing to put, you have something to put. I promise you have something to put. Just open your mind and think about things a little bit more open-mindedly and differently.
And just one thing that's more specific about resumes that I see more in like artists and also sometimes programmers, and I don't know how the rest of the panel feels, but this is a specific pet peeve of mine when I get a resume, and I see a bunch of technical skills, and there might be like a meter or something that's next to it to show your level of proficiency, and pretty much everything is almost at max with every single technical that drives me crazy because it doesn't tell me anything. I'd recommend personally avoiding that type of like any sort of scale or rating of the skills on a resume, and just kind of listing what you're proficient at. And if you want to say like, oh, I'm proficient in this, and just familiar basic level, just label it like that. I think that's one of the most common things that I see. I'm like, this doesn't.
That's a good point, Brittany, and to tag along with that, there is a subversive way that you could sort of indicate your preference of skills, and that is the order that you list them in. So I always assume when people say, I'm an animator and a modeler, that they're like, you're a specialist animator and you're a secondary modeler, right? So just list it in the order, and it's like a sneaky way to say, this is the order of skills that I'm good at in the order that I state them.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree, and Erik, there's that sort of implied hierarchy of skills, but sometimes I look at it, and I've questioned students when they show me their resume, and it's like, well, why is it in the order it's in? And it's like, well, that's just the order I thought of, or it's I clumped the engines together and the modeling tools together, but they're all still under one skill category. It's like, we could have a whole other conversation just on resumes tonight, I think. I've already stated my hatred in the chat for meters. Brittany, I am there with you 100%. My meter is 100% for how much I hate meters on resumes, because they mean nothing. But yeah, you have to find that fine line between a little bit of style that shows you are a designer and a visual thinker and a communicator that puts a little bit of effort into everything you do, but it's not so stylized that it's distracting and it makes it hard to scan and read. So I would default more towards the boring side with a little pinch of style, and ignore the meters completely. But Jen, I want to support the idea of those specific bullet points, especially when it's transferable skills, but even when it's not. Nobody needs a job description bulleted pointed for them after you've given them the job title. Quantify and make an argument in those bullet points to say how much you did that job better than anybody else did that job. What was the scale? How big was the team? How many assets did you make? There's some way to make an argument in those bullet points that aren't just sort of dismissible. And like Brittany's saying, that it's not only frontline with many hiring processes. There'll be jobs where the resume is actually more important if there is no visual portfolio for a programmer or even a narrative designer, you might have to get their attention first with that before you're sending them to writing samples or code samples or whatever. So you really do have to put some thought into it. I sense I and many people on this panel could go on for another hour or two on some of these topics, but I'm hoping we have more than one person in the audience who is interested in the one-to-one, and I want to make good use of the remaining 45 minutes or so we have with our panelists tonight. So just saw the baseball card thing. Yes, I'm going to use that one.
I'm waiting now because I've seen so many different types of business cards. Now I'm expecting someone to come to Nick with their baseball business
I was
card.
gonna say, I may have just created a monster because I would be actually kind of impressed if that happened.
So any cards I've seen at GDC, I'm surprised I've not seen someone do that yet. Make it a baseball card, exactly, Jason.
Jason, stop. No one understands that. No one understands baseball.
It's not what my Twitter tells me, but I don't get it. Anyway.